It's my pleasure to introduce to you this morning our commencement speaker, Ms. Cherie Harder. Ms. Harder is the president of the Trinity Forum. You can read much about it in the graduation bulletin, the Trinity Forum, which cultivates and disseminates the best of Christian thought in order to contribute to the transformation and renewal of society. Prior to joining the Trinity Forum in 2008, Cherie served in the Bush administration, was a special assistant to President Bush and director of policy and projects for First Lady Laura Bush. In addition to that, Cherie has served in the public square for a number of years. She knows the value of living out Christian faith in the public arena. Her life and career are very akin with the mission and vision of this university, and so it's with great pleasure I introduce to you Ms. Cherie Harder, who, while running an institution which works on Christian thought, is in her own right a leading Christian thinker. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Cherie Harder.
Well, thank you, President Williams, for that very kind introduction. It is such an honor as well as a privilege to be with you today. President Williams, Chairman Shefflin, and the members of the Board of Trustees, members of the faculty, administration, and staff, family, friends, and honored guests, and of course, members of the class of 2016, congratulations. It is a great day. It may be gray and gloomy, sad and soggy looking outside, but today is a day of great faithfulness and persistence in a worthy pursuit, as well as the commencement of a new chapter. Graduates, you are to be doubly congratulated, not only for graduating today, but for graduating from this university, Cairn University. For you are graduating from a university that has been dedicated not only to equipping you to be employable or certifying you as an educated member of a society, but one that has been committed to cultivating, educating, and ennobling the entirety of who you are. A person made in the image of God with talents, abilities, imagination, and curiosity, a culture maker, someone with an inborn wiring for relationship, a latent capacity to love and to know truth, beauty, and goodness, and their author and artist. To graduate from such a school is not merely to be equipped for a good job or a good graduate school, but a good life. Over the past few years, you've studied the words, the works, and lives of some of the most profound men and women in all of history. You've learned to reason and write with clarity and conviction. You've grown in understanding the moral and spiritual knowledge the Bible provides in knowing who God is, who we are, and how to understand our world. And therefore, you've come to better know the author of the answers to the great questions of life. And so it's hard to imagine what can be added now in the last hour of your last day here at Cairn. So I'll simply offer one very modest form of encouragement for the exciting years ahead, which is simply this: to pay attention. Or more specifically, pay attention to the content you consume, the friends you keep, and to what you love and prioritize. Now, why is this important? One neuroscientist put it this way: attention can be considered the ignition key of the mind. A vast array of our mental and physical actions all follow what we attend to. Indeed, so many of our spiritual disciplines are all geared towards focusing on our attention on what truly matters, what matters most. What we pay attention to is freighted with moral, intellectual, and spiritual consequence, as it literally determines how you think, what you know, what you love, and thus who you are and who you become. Now, this may sound simple, perhaps even simplistic, but it is far from easy. Indeed, there are many things that compete for our time and attention. And more than ever, it is the cultural norm to spend our lives deeply distracted. Indeed, distraction has become so pervasive and widespread, we rarely notice it anymore, much like a fish doesn't know it's wet. Consider just a few time use statistics. The average American now spends more time consuming electronic entertainment than they do at work. In fact, Nielsen shows that the average American spends more than 33 hours a week watching traditional TV, another 2.5 hours watching time-shifted TV, another 4 to 40 hours on the internet, and at least that many hours watching internet video. And in general, the younger one is, the more they consume. The average teenager now sends or receives more than 3,300 texts per month, or more than 6 per waking hour. Over the last few years, at least a quarter of all car crashes, over 1 million a year, were the result of distracted driving. It's not a stretch to say that we are the most distracted and overloaded society in all of history. There are many studies that show that even as our time at work continues to increase, so does time spent watching TV, surfing the internet, texting, posting on social media, and the like. And what is squeezed out, because of course time is zero-sum, is time spent socializing in person, reading, family time, and sleep. So where has this left us? We are working longer hours, but we're more likely to be in debt. We call, text, email, tweet, Skype, and post more than ever, but we are also more likely to complain of loneliness and broken relationships. We have access to oceans of information, but can't focus. Left to drift in our cultural stream, we're likely to wind up, in the words of one sociologist, fat, addicted, broke, with a house full of junk and no time. Distraction will keep you from focusing on what matters most. It will prevent you from investing in that which is most valuable. It will keep you from taking on the big challenges, distort your outlook, and dissipate your energies. It doesn't have to be that way, but it does require that one pay attention. In addition, we should pay attention to the content that we consume. Now, over the last several years, you have been given extraordinary food for thought here at Cairn. And now you will increasingly make your own decisions about the books you read, the articles you skim, the social media you scan, the posts you comment on, the movies you watch, and the music you listen to. And the content will affect not only what you think about, but it will literally shape your mind. After all, there's a reason why advertising is a multi-billion-dollar industry. What we hear, even if it's just for a few seconds, actually has a measurable impact on what we buy, how we vote, in short, how we perceive the world. For just one example, there's growing evidence that the more violent entertainment one consumes, the more likely one is to actually show aggression yourself, be desensitized to others' pain, or perceive the world as a more mean and violent place than it actually is. But the stories we read can also shape our imagination for good. Many of you may be fans of C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia, as I am. And you may remember a story where we know almost immediately that Eustace Clarence Scrubb is going to need to develop as a character. And one of the ways C.S. Lewis lets us know this is that Eustace had only read books about plumbing, imports, and government policies, and he'd never read good stories. And so when Eustace was confronted by a dragon in real life, he had no idea what to do. He had not read the great stories that taught him how to deal with a dragon, a moral danger. And so when faced with one in the story, he simply didn't know what to do and had to learn the hard way. It's also perhaps no surprise that Philippians 4:8, one of the happiest verses in the Bible, tells us, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is praiseworthy or excellent, think about these things. Now, this goes directly counter to where the culture will take us. If we drift with the culture, the content we consume will inevitably tend to the mediocre, the trivial, the vulgar, the violent, even the pornographic. And much like food, a diet of junk can ruin one's ability to recognize and appreciate what is truly great. It's much like having a Twinkie before a glass of fine Pinot Noir. It so distorts one's taste that it's hard to recognize, much less enjoy, something that is truly complex, valuable, and extraordinary, even when it's right under one's nose. Another area to pay attention to is the friends you keep, both in the sense of paying attention to the kind of friends you have, and in the sense of investing in and in keeping the ones you love. The Bible, of course, has much to say about friendships and advises that we often will take on the characteristics of our companions. Growing empirical evidence also shows that we do, in fact, take on the habits, the practices, the attitudes, and the assumptions of our friends. We are, after all, relational creatures, formed for and formed by relationship. And we will be changed by those we befriend. But just as one should pay attention to the friends they select, it is perhaps even more important to pay attention to keeping your friends. In writing for his book, The Social Animal, New York Times columnist David Brooks was trying to explore what makes for happiness and flourishing in life. And one of the things he found through sifting through a great deal of research is a very simple truth, that the deeper the relationships a person has, the happier he or she will be. He writes, people are actually quite bad at judging what will make them happy. They tend to vastly overvalue work, money, and real estate. And they vastly undervalue the importance of intimate bonds and arduous challenges. The friends you have made over the last few years at Cairn may well be friends for life. And there are few joys that rival that of a long and seasoned and rich friendship. Finally, I want to encourage you to pay attention to what you love and prioritize. Over 1,500 years ago, St. Augustine argued that the good life depended on the proper ordering of one's loves and priorities, what he called the ordo amorum. And he observed that our attention, our knowledge, and our affections tend to go together. What you love and prioritize will shape your life. And stewarding your life thus requires that attention be paid to what you love, what you focus on and invest in. Now, that, of course, does not mean that good stewardship requires playing it safe or shying away for risk or challenge. Many of you will recall the parable of the talents. It was precisely the person who played it safe, who buried that talent in the sand so he could be sure it would be there, who actually received criticism from the master. And it was the two servants who went out and took risk, who invested that talent, who were commended. Each of us has God-given talents, abilities, and capacities, and they're given to you to give, to invest, and engage. It's often all too easy to drift with a cultural current, but following God's call almost always involves leaving one's comfort zone in ways that are very difficult, if impossible, to predict, and yet preparation is so vital. Consider the example of Martin Luther King Jr. While still in his 30s, he's thrown into prison in Birmingham in a small jail. Denied of most writing materials, he has nothing but a pencil, a few scraps of paper, and toilet paper. And it is on the backs of those scraps of paper and TP that he drafts Letter from Birmingham Jail, quoting Augustine, Aquinas, John Bunyan, Paul Tillich, in laying out a case for civil rights. That's nothing that he could have predicted, but he'd spent a lifetime in preparation, and he was ready. Or consider the case of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. At the time of Dietrich Bonhoeffer's death, it may well have looked like his life was a failure. Here was an utterly brilliant man who hanged at the age of 39, just a few days before the end of the war. When he died, he did not know that he was Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And indeed, it may well have seemed that all of those degrees, all of that writing, all that investment in different relationships may well have been for naught. But his example and his work and legacy are, decades later, across an ocean, an inspiration to so many of us. He could not have known the outcome of that, but he was faithful. Or consider the example of Florence Nightingale. She set out to do the work that she felt God had called her to, even though it was against the gender roles and cultural standards of her time. It defied all proper conventions of the time of proper women's work, and yet she saved the lives of tens of thousands and revolutionized the nursing industry. Your story will be your own. Many people have poured so much into you. Their love, their care, their encouragement, an excellent and faithful education, and appreciation of what is true, good, and beautiful. They have helped you develop a vision for a life well lived in summons to God's call in whatever sector of society or corner of the world that He may call you to. They are exciting times ahead, times of opportunity, growth, discovery, exploration, and service. Steward them well. Pay attention. And graduates, congratulations.